like to introduce my husband, Josh Martin, who worked with the Hockessin Colored School number 107 early on and can bring us up to date on the history of the loan. Josh, would you just give us what you know?
Thank you, Cynthia. I got involved with the Hockessin Colored School 107 back in 2011. It was in September when I was contacted by Theo Nix, who's an attorney at the DuPont Company, who had some understanding of what was happening to the Hockessin Colored School 107. Let me just stop for a minute and tell you a little bit about that school. The school has not only local and state significance, but also national significance, because that school is where black kids had to travel an extended distance to get their education. And it was Lewis Redding who brought a court suit called Gebhardt versus Belton, which ultimately went to the Court of Chancery in Delaware. And that became a part of the 5 Brown versus Board of Education cases, where segregation in public schools in the United States was declared to be unconstitutional. The Delaware case, the Gebhardt case, was significant because in this particular case, the state court was the only one of the 5 in the United States who got it right and made the decision that segregation in public schools was unconstitutional, and so the Delaware court case was affirmed. But the Gebhardt versus Belton case arose from this Colored School 107 in Hockessin. I was contacted because apparently there was going to be an upcoming auction where the property would be auctioned off and it would be sold. It turns out that the deed to that property was held by the Hockessin Community Center out in Hockessin, obviously, and they had attempted to put an addition onto the building so that it could be used as a community center. They wanted to build this addition, and they had contracted with a company called Petrocon to do it, but unfortunately the Hockessin Community Center didn't raise enough funds to get the job done. There was a mechanics lien filed against the property, and it had gone to the Superior Court in the summer of 2011, and the court gave the Hockessin Community Center until November 1st of that year to pay off this mechanics lien, which was approximately $210,000 or $212,000. I was asked to get involved in this to save the school. I looked at the project and I said, you know, this is something that I'll obviously have to get involved in pro bono, because I normally do not do this kind of representation, but I knew that I could get other lawyers from my firm, which was Potter Anderson and Caroon, to see if we could save the school. The best way for me to get that done was to become counsel to the Hockessin Community Center. So I did have that relationship through the period that's relevant to this loan from the African American Empowerment Fund. I can indicate to you now that what I'm going to share with you is going to be public information. It will certainly not violate any attorney-client privilege with what was then my client, the Hockessin Community Center. I started working very diligently, continuing with the story about the Hockessin Community Center and the background for the loan from the African American Empowerment Fund. During the fall of 2011, I worked feverishly with the other attorneys at my firm with a possible outside investor who we thought was going to provide enough money to save this school. If the school had become auctioned, it was our expectation that the building would have been demolished. So that was the additional reason for moving with some urgency. As we got close to November 1st of that year, it was either just before that, and I think that's probably the right time frame, or just after that date, that I had Judge Williams to join me. Even though I was counsel for the Hockessin Community Center, Judge Williams joined me as an advisor because he had actually helped to organize Petrocon construction, and he knew the 2 principals in that firm, and I thought he would be very effective in trying to negotiate with them, and he was. So between us, we were able to demonstrate to them as of November 1st that we were making progress, and they did give us an extension to a date in January. That exact date escapes me right now, maybe like January 10th or 12th. But it became apparent that we would have to raise this money through soliciting funds, and it did not appear that we were going to get anywhere close to the $210,000. But to cut to the chase, I then had some conversations with Tony Allen, and Tony was in touch with Billy Allen to see if we could get any support from the African American Empowerment Fund. After extensive discussions, there was a meeting, and I've seen the correspondence on that, where the board of the African American Empowerment Fund heard the presentation from me as to what we needed. And what we were looking for at that point was a challenge loan of $100,000 from the African American Empowerment Fund. In other words, if we could raise $110,000 and they could provide a challenge loan to match 100 of that, we could satisfy this lien and save the school. And that's what we really worked hard to try and accomplish. After that meeting, there was a decision to provide that loan. It was set up as a 12-month loan. There was extensive discussion by the principals of the African American Empowerment Fund, which I was not a part of, but they were having that discussion about what the risks were that were involved. I can tell you, the principals understood that this would be risky simply because where was the Hockessin Community Center going to get the money to pay it back? And they understood that. By the same token, if you looked at the importance of this task, and that is saving this historical structure, the principals in the African American Empowerment Fund felt that this was a good use of the funds. So with that, we went back to the Petrocon construction people and said we need a bit more extension because we have a challenge loan here which will match part of what we have to raise, but now we have to raise the rest of the money. To make a long story short, we were able to raise those additional funds. We got the challenge loan for the African American Empowerment Fund, and I will tell you that the principals of the construction company which held the lien also contributed to the fund to try to satisfy this lien in the court. The lien was satisfied in the February to March 2012 timeframe. So that is the background. Hopefully I've covered enough of the background here to help you understand that this was a situation of unbelievable urgency. There were a number of deadlines where we came within 12 hours of losing this battle. It was obviously a joint community effort to raise those funds, and the significance of the challenge loan from the African American Empowerment Fund cannot be ignored. It was a massive undertaking for something that was felt to be very important to the community. So hopefully that provides some background as to how this loan came about. I will just tell you that it became clear after this that my client, the Hockessin Community Center, was not going to be able to go forward and refurbish this building. And a new organization called the Friends of Hockessin Colored School 107 came into being, and Judge Williams was still involved in that. I had to step away because obviously I had the prior relationship as counsel to the Hockessin Community Center, and it became clear that the Hockessin Community Center could not be a part of the initiative going forward. When this problem occurred originally, they had raised less than $10,000 to complete this construction, and that's where the mechanics lien occurred. But this new group, the Friends of Hockessin Colored School 107, has been working diligently since this happened with architectural plans to figure out how best to reconfigure that site to save the school, to raise the necessary funds to get it all done. And obviously they have the obligation to pay back this $100,000 loan from the African American Empowerment Fund. And I have tremendous confidence in every member of that group. They work very diligently, and even though I haven't been a part of those discussions recently, I know that those efforts are ongoing, and I'm totally supportive of the things that they're doing. So again, hopefully I provided some background. If there are questions that you have of me, don't hesitate to ask me, consistent with my obligations as an attorney here, having had a client which was the Hockessin Community Center, which is no longer involved. But for that relationship, I will be sure and answer your questions. Cynthia, I hope that's satisfactory.
That's wonderful. Thank you very much, Josh.